think we're going to go ahead and get started, and I will share with you the agenda for this evening, and share a little bit about what our mission is at Parent Council Network, and that will be before we get into our legislative discussion. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Washington Township Parent Council Network October meeting. My name is Shelley Clark, and I am the volunteer who is president this year. And I will start us off by talking about our mission and our beliefs. And after that, we will get an update from the administration, and Dr. Nikki Woodson is here on the call with us this evening. We will then get a school board update from Tracy Horth Kruger. And after that, we'll jump into the legislative forum, and that format, we will ask questions. We've got some questions that have already come into us, but we will, you can certainly post your questions in the chat. And that's going to be led by Crystal Pascal, who is our Public Policy Committee Chair this year and past president. And then we'll get more information from Crystal about what she plans for the Public Policy Committee. We'll hear from Taryn Grieser, who is our treasurer, on our treasury updates. I'll talk a little bit about what we're looking forward to for next month, and then we'll just close it out, and I have a teeny bit of homework for you all. So let me just start by explaining what is Parent Council Network. The Washington Township Parent Council Network is an independent, nonpartisan group of parent and caregiver advocates of MSDWT students who represent a diverse community in Indianapolis and believe that high quality, fully and equitably funded public education under local democratic control is an investment in the future. Our mission is to represent and give a district-wide voice to the educational interests of families and to strive to enhance the quality of public education in our township. Our core beliefs: number one, our highest priorities are our children and their education. Number two, we value public education and our community public schools. Number three, parents have the right to meaningful participation in the process of public education. Diverse parent leadership, talent, influence, and perspective are vital to excellent education. And the community of Washington Township values and supports public schools and public education. We have 4 pillars that support our mission. We inform and empower parents by providing objective and pertinent information regarding our schools. We collaborate with parents and educators to maintain the quality and highlight the diversity of our schools. We influence the future of public education in our school district by involving parents in the public policy process. And we advocate for all Washington Township students by electing school board members that we as parents feel will move our district forward. So tonight we are basically doing 2 of our pillars, which are informing you about what's going on at the legislature, and that influence component where we are, asking questions of our legislators and learning about what we can do to advocate for our students in our schools. Just want to point out that all members, anybody who comes to our meetings is automatically an ad hoc member, but we do have what are called voting members, and that voting member structure allows for a cross-section of our district to participate in the business and sort of the bigger issues that we vote on at Parent Council Network. And so we allow for 10 voting members from each elementary school, 12 from the middle schools, and 24 from the high school, which means there's 130 possible voting members for this group. That is just people who have agreed to sign up to be a voting member. And that means that you're willing to commit to attending a majority of our meetings throughout the school year. You can find us on social media on Facebook and Twitter, and we also have a website, which we need to update, but our website is MSDWTparentcouncil.org. And I just want to lay out some basic meeting information and ground rules before we begin. I just want to let you know that our meetings are usually recorded. We'd ask you to mute yourself unless you're speaking. We know we're a group of parents, so be as present as you can. Zoom is hard, especially with kids in the background, so we get it. We understand. We are tackling issues, not people. And any concerns involving specific individuals are HR issues and should be directed to the administration. And we will respect others' opinions and personal experiences. So that is basically kind of the introduction to Parent Council Network. We're really grateful that you chose to be here this evening. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Dr. Woodson so she could give us our superintendent's update.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone, parents and school board member and legislators. Thanks so much for being here. The last time I spoke to you, we were having a lot of challenges to start the school year in first quarter that I gave comments on. This time, I want to do quite the opposite. Amidst all those challenges during the first grading period of the school year, we have had tremendous progress academically and celebrations happening at every single school in the district. Right before fall break, I sent a complete list to the board of all of the celebrations per school. And tonight, for my update to Parent Council Network, I'd like to highlight some of those celebrations per school from the first grading period of the school year. At Willow Lake, they had NWEA growth for students in math and literacy that broke records from spring to fall. They also established goal setting for all students academically. At Spring Mill, they are doing weekly walkthroughs utilizing core target instructional practices to ensure academics are progressing in every single classroom. At Nora, they had a huge success with their Norathon last month, raising over $2,000 to support their community. They are also implementing a Latino family literacy project at Nora, which is very exciting. Greenbrier, overall spring to fall growth on NWEA and math and reading exceeded goals and targets for each grade level. They also have over 150 students signed up for an after-school learning lab designed to curb some of the academic challenges caused by COVID-19. At Fox Hill, they saw a 12% increase in the number of students working at grade level in reading and a 14% growth in the number of kindergarten students who have moved up levels in reading. At Crooked Creek, their spring to fall math proficiency went up almost 3%. Their spring to fall reading proficiency went up almost 2.5%. And their fall to fall reading proficiency went up 1%. And we're very proud of that growth. At Clearwater, they accomplished the school-wide goal of 97% of the students at Clearwater not receiving an office discipline referral in August or September. And their NWEA math achievement scores increased from spring to fall. At Allisonville, they had a 6% increase in NWEA math proficiency and a 4% increase in literacy proficiency spring to fall that they are celebrating. At True North Academy, they are excited about their Wednesday wellness program that they are piloting for students to learn about wellness and mindfulness. And I happened to witness one of their drumming circles that they do for mindfulness. That was an amazing experience and even brought mindfulness to my own busy day. So that was exciting. At JEL, they have a 9% increase in student enrollment in career technical classes, which is wonderful. North Central High School was recognized by the Department of Education for the high number of graduates who earn a 3.0 GPA or higher, or 3.0 or higher on AP exams, which were one of few high schools in the state to be recognized for that. They are also recognizing the North Central High School from the DOE for the number of National Merit semifinalists. And we were one of the greatest number of National Merit semifinalists at North Central High School in all of Marion County. At West Lane Middle School, students had an average GPA at the first midterm of 3.23, which outpaced the 2019 scores quite a bit, which we're excited about that. Reading proficiency for our Wildcats at West Lane increased 6% from spring to fall. Over at Northview Middle School, they implemented a parent academy for the first time this year to bring families in for support, to gain feedback and collaborate on the educational process. They have over 18,000 pages read through independent reading by their students in a Rockstar Reader program. And they have implemented a cultural calendar at Northview, which has increased activities for students and raised awareness for students' cultural backgrounds. And last but certainly not least, at Eastwood, they held their first block party community event, which connected families to the school. And they completed nearly 3 times the recommended goal set for IXL in math and English language arts. So that's just a quick round robin of some celebrations per school, but a summary is there are amazing things happening amidst complex challenges in all of our schools across the district. And it's only made possible with strong partnerships from home and organizations such like Parent Council Network, and without question, an extraordinary Washington Township staff that goes above and beyond every single day to support our students, from the bus drivers who's giving positive affirmations to our students as they're getting on the bus every day, to cafeteria workers that greet our students with breakfast in the morning, to teachers and administrators supporting the learning process, to custodians making sure that the learning environment is in good condition. Just appreciate everyone and appreciate and celebrate all that is happening in our schools. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. That's all. That sounds wonderful. And just that, yes, we recognize that Washington Township staff is going above and beyond, including administrators, all the way, through the entire system. So we appreciate everything that you all are doing. So next up, we have Mrs. Horth Kruger, who is filling in for our board liaison, Mrs. George Davis, who was unable to be here this evening. So we welcome Mrs. Horth Kruger, and we're anxious to hear any school board update that you can provide.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be with you. I'm sorry that I have to be here for Deirdre, as she's not able to attend tonight, but I appreciate the opportunity. So just some quick updates from the President Don Kite and I went through today to share with you. And then also I want to just offer up some thoughts that I had from attending the Indiana School Board Association conference last week. First of all, as you all know, but just to make sure, we do have a new chief of police, Roosevelt Lindsay, who's doing a fantastic job. Certainly, it's been a priority of the board and administration to focus on safety concerns, including what I think is a great idea from Dr. Woodson on creating or forming a roundtable almost discussion of experts to address what else we can be doing as a school system to address safety issues. That is new. I don't even think it's launched yet. Dr. Woodson will have to weigh in on that, but I think that's a great idea. Director of Elementary Education interviews start next week, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that. Groundbreaking for the Early Learning Center is next Thursday, which is also very exciting to add to the wonderful accomplishments that are happening in the township. I'm sure and hope everybody had a nice week off from fall break. So we're just day 3 back into after fall break. So those are just a few brief updates from the board perspective. But as I mentioned, I did have the chance for the first time to attend the Indiana School Boards Association and the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents Conference last Monday and Tuesday at the convention center. It seemed like robust attendance to me, but as mentioned, it's my first time, so I don't really know how to compare it, but I didn't know what to expect. But it was well attended. And the title of the 2 days was Re-envisioning, Reimagining, and Reinventing Public Education in a New Era. So the majority of the breakout sessions really fell into 2 or 3 categories. Yeah, 3 categories. A lot of focus on equity, which I'm very proud to sit in those conversations to learn, and knowing that our school system is really leading on, in my opinion, around so many of these issues, but focusing on equity, focusing on social emotional learning environments. And as schools are going through renovations and construction, how they're adopting the environment around social emotional learning to make sure that there are areas within the school to be promoting that SEL, which I thought was really interesting. How to stretch your budget. A lot of, there were a couple of breakouts on board governance. But also there were, one of the things that I did want to lift up, because I think it would be good if you looked this gentleman up, and I'm sure Dr. Woodson is familiar. Dr. David Schuler, Schuler. He's the current superintendent of District 214 in Arlington Heights, Illinois. But he has spearheaded this national initiative called Redefining Ready, the Redefining Ready movement, which is redefining what it means for students to be college, career, and life ready. Again, some of the things that he talked about, we are incorporating in Washington Township, which is very exciting. But it was all about a shift in language, framing opportunities a little differently, really focusing on the student and family to support the student's success. A couple of examples. He talked a lot about how we need to be preparing students to earn a family wage supporting job, however they define that. Very much about college readiness, but also not overlooking the trades, community college, anything whatever that child needs to be a successful family wage earner. And I really liked that encompassing the larger picture and not marginalizing, which I do think is an emphasis of our school system. But he talked a lot about really, and in terms of bringing the family along, he gave the example of a young woman who was a senior and had been awarded a full scholarship to a community college in automotive science, so that she could pursue a career in that, and her automotive repair. And her father said no, she didn't need to go to college, because he'd never went to college and people in his family hadn't gone to college. And so it was all about families know what they know. And if they don't know about that experience, then they're not going to be that excited about it for their student. So what happened was the dad said no, and the superintendent, and he said, this was bad on me and it'll never happen again. A couple of years later, he was just thinking about this young woman and asked, and that was at that point that he learned that the scholarship had been declined, and that she was working at a fast food restaurant and had a couple of children. And his whole point was, and I'm not being, and that's wonderful, she's working and she's trying to support her children, I get all that, but the point of the story was dad didn't know the experience, so dad said no. So one of the things that they're doing now is taking first time or parents who haven't been to college on campus visits, which I thought was really interesting, because he said these, you can really see parents then embrace the concept of seeing their child on that campus or at that community college or whatever their choice is. So he was very interesting. So, and he was a keynote speaker on day 2. So I would suggest that you read about the Redefining Ready movement. And again, I see a lot of that work happening in our school district, but it was just interesting. And everything that they do is they have data to inform all of their practices. So for me personally, that was the highlight of the 2 days. I just appreciated that because it was positive and empowering, and it was just redefining and being willing to accept change, which I, again, think that we do as a school system. So I enjoyed that. Otherwise, it was a lot about budget. There was not much about, interestingly enough, and then I'll stop. There was only one breakout regarding impact of the pandemic. And I thought that was interesting. There was not a lot of COVID discussion at all. So, and it was all about how has the pandemic impacted your students' achievement? I did not sit in on that one, but that was the only one of the offerings that really talked about COVID. So.
That sounds wonderful. It sounds like it was very educational and somewhat progressive. And if you have materials or any information that you would like to share with our organization, we can, share that with our parent membership and on our social media or whatever, if you have anything to send us.
I do think that they're going to send us the PowerPoints at some point, which I would be happy to share. I'm sure that that's fine. Otherwise, there's a big booklet. But yeah, I'll look for that email and I'll forward it to you.
Thank you. And just to let our parents know that the next school board meeting is next Wednesday, is that correct? At 6 p.m., October 27th? Okay. Does anyone have any questions for our superintendent or our school board member this evening? You can feel free to ask it in the chat or unmute if you feel comfortable. All right. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, let's shift now to the legislative forum part of our meeting, the sort of the focus topic that we have tonight. As we shift to this portion, I'd like to point out again that our organization is nonpartisan. Education should not be political. This is about our children. Our kids don't, and this is a quote from former State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dr. Reed, who was a Republican. She said, "Our kids don't come to school with little D's and R's stamped on their foreheads." So we all care about what's best for our students and our publicly funded community schools. I do want to point out that since we have our legislators here, that the Indiana General Assembly, per the Indiana Constitution, is charged with establishing and funding our public schools. And by law, required to provide a general and uniform system of common schools wherein tuition shall be without charge and equally open to all. So feel free to look up Article 8 of the, Section 1, Article 8 of the Indiana Constitution to read more. So we're honored and grateful to have 5 legislators here with us tonight. I think we have all 5. And these are legislators whose districts cover Washington Township. And this is something that we do annually that's required by our bylaws and has happened for decades in our district. Tonight we have Senator Kedora, Senator Taylor, I think. Is he on? I don't know if he...
I haven't seen Senator Taylor.
Okay, he may be popping in later. Representative Hamilton, Representative Porter, and Representative Delaney. We appreciate that they are spending some time with us this evening. And in case you didn't know, 3, I believe, of those legislators are also Washington Township parents here in our district. I believe maybe with all of them with kids at North Central. So that's really exciting. It's nice to see them around the district at school functions, and it's just really great. And I also wanted to just add a little tidbit here. I was looking at our Facebook page today where we had posted a picture of some of our legislators this evening, and saw that our former superintendent, Dr. Mervildi, made a comment, and he said that they were true friends of public schools. And so, you know, Washington Township parents here who know, who've been around and know a lot about public policy, know that that statement is true, and it's not just on how they talk, but how they vote. So we thank them for being here tonight to meet us, to answer our questions, and share what they think Washington Township parents should know. And so I'm going to pass this over to our past president, Crystal Pascal. She's going to lead the discussion tonight. Crystal has advocacy experience at the State House and is now serving as our Public Policy Committee Chair. And Crystal has 3 kids and is a Northview and Nora parent. So I will pass it over to Crystal.
Thanks so much, Shelley. Thanks everyone for joining us, and a special thanks to our legislators for joining us tonight. This is one of my favorite events that we do every year, and I'm really excited to be spearheading it this year. Before we jump in, I just wanted to say that if the things that you hear tonight get you fired up and you perhaps are interested in getting more involved with advocating for public schools, there are a lot of really great ways that you can get involved with our Public Policy Council. They don't all take a lot of time. They don't require any money. They just require a little bit of dedication and a lot of probably contacting the folks we're going to meet tonight to let them know your thoughts and feelings on public education. So I'm going to drop in the chat an interest form. If you have any interest in being part of the Public Policy Committee, I would just love to get to know you more and talk about ways that you can plug in. So thank you for that. Then now for what we're all here for, to hear from our legislators. I'd like to start by just jumping in and giving each one of our legislators a chance to introduce themselves, let you know who they are, how long they've been serving, and what part of Washington Township they represent. So Representative Delaney, you're first on my screen, so we'll start with you.
You're on mute, Ed.
There we go. All right, I'm Ed Delaney. I'm from House District 86, which is much of Meridian Kessler, much of Washington Township west of Meridian Street. That's the new district I'm talking about. Small part of Pike and a small part of IPS system. But I'd say 2/3 of the students in my district are probably in the Washington Township schools, which I strongly support. I'm just going to make a couple quick points, all based around two core facts. First of all, public schools are institutions. School boards are institutions, and you're in an era where institutions are being eroded, including at the State House, where there's very little respect for institutions such as school boards or public health officers. That's a big problem. The second problem, I think, or focus from my point of view, is to look at what happened the last 10 years and kind of speculate about the next 10 years. In the last 10 years, while the percentage of students who are in traditional public schools maintained itself at about 93, 94%, much of the legislature's attention went to the 5 or 6% who are receiving vouchers or are operating non-institutional enterprises known as charter schools. Okay, so your first problem is for 10 years, we have literally turned our eyes away from traditional public schools. And what are the examples of what we've accomplished besides giving away a lot of money, not raising teacher pay until recently? We also went through a whole series of experiments in testing, which just didn't work out, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and which we'll probably continue doing, despite the fact that they have utterly failed. That's looking back. Looking forward, the bad news is there's discussion of such things as having partisan elections for the school boards. This is apparently a hot idea among certain people. Other attacks on the institutions. And the number one thing I've talked to Dr. Woodson about is the federal government has just sent this district and all of our districts a lot of money. We have got to use it very effectively to catch up the kids who slip behind, to build new programs that are going to be working, and then come back to the State House and explain why they should be continued. The one thing we must not do is waste money on flagrant or extravagant activities. This will provide an excuse to cut state support and to criticize public education. So we have to be careful with the money. We have to find out what works. I was very gratified to hear these great numbers about the improvements that are going on in the NWEA. That is an example of an effective, low-cost test that informs parents, administrators, and students, and that the legislature doesn't muck around with. So let's hope that we continue that kind of emphasis. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Representative Delaney. You hit on about 5 of the questions I have on my list. So
Good.
I'm excited to talk more about those things tonight. Next up, I'm going to go to Senator Kedora.
Thank you, Crystal, and good evening, everyone. I have the honor of representing Senate District 30, which currently covers the north side of Indy, mainly Washington Township, and the south side of Hamilton County, Fishers and Carmel. My new district will continue to represent most of Washington Township, but also they took the Hamilton County portion of my district and added Lawrence Township and a lot of sections of Pike Township. So now my district is fully contained within Marion County. As far as the committees that I serve on that are critical to tonight's meeting, I think I'm the only, doesn't matter Republican or Democrat, I'm the only state senator from Central Indiana that serves on the Appropriations Committee. And then Senator J.D. Ford and I serve on the Education Committee. And I serve with Senator Eddie Melton on the subcommittee on school funding. I ran for office for the first time in my life last November. So I've been in office for less than a year. My campaign #1 priority was to fully support our traditional public schools because of our constitutional commitment to fund our schools across the state. I think I was the only state senator on the Senate side. I know many of my colleagues on the House side joined me in introducing similar legislation. But on November of last year, 20 days after I got elected, I introduced my first two bills. The first was raising teacher compensation across the state of Indiana. And I worked based on the recommendations of the governor's office. I didn't care where good ideas came from. The governor is a Republican. I supported some of the governor's legislation or proposals to increase the average wage for teachers across the state to be a minimum of $40,000, despite the rejection and opposition of many of my colleagues in the Senate. The second education omnibus bill that I've introduced dealt with all kinds of educational issues. So I'm happy to report that the fully funding schools that went virtual because of COVID was in my bill, being sure that schools are not held harmful or that we hold them harmless as far as the scoring or the grading of schools based on student performance. I've also introduced legislation to expand early childhood and pre-K services across the state and several other things. Initially, all of my ideas were rejected under the idea that we don't have money to fund any of these proposals. But because I serve on the Appropriations Committee, when we received the American Rescue Plan dollars, we were able to move one-time expenditures from the state budget to the American Rescue Plan dollars, and that freed up over $1.5 billion in our state budget to fund our schools. That money came through the funding, education funding formula. We made adjustments to the complexity index. It's not perfect, but we worked on it. We've increased the foundation amount for per student. We've increased the funding for special education. We've preserved the funding for career and technical education, and we've increased the funding for English language learners program under the school funding. That was something that I promised I will work on, and I busted my behind with the help of many of my colleagues to be sure that we made that a reality, and it made it to the final budget and it was approved, and I'm extremely proud of that. I am a parent of two Panthers at North Central. My heart is with my district, not because I'm elected, but because I'm a parent and I deeply care about our school system. I'm extremely concerned about the politicization of our educational system. I know for a fact that I've heard from some of my colleagues that they will be introducing legislation to politicize school board races and to basically come up with some legislation to censor or to regulate curriculum in schools. In a democracy, one, I don't think that censorship goes alongside with democracy. And second, I'm extremely concerned that most of what we hear about social and emotional learning or critical race theory are manufactured crises for the purposes of the 2022 elections. Because the purpose behind scaring voters is basically just to scare voters without knowledge of what these issues are. I have an email in my inbox from the superintendent or the secretary of education that we do not teach CRT in any of our schools. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the fact that it's being used by some of my colleagues to justify the politicization of some of our school boards is completely wrong. So I will be opposing any effort to basically politicize our school boards and to damage the future or the opportunities for many future generations of young kids to grow up in a school system that is very focused on raising them in a way that is focused on academics and education while providing safe environments. I don't want the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to be in charge of our school boards. And I made myself very clear on this issue. But I look forward to serving with my colleagues. I'm your servant, and I look forward to protecting and supporting funding for our schools and honoring and respecting staff, teachers, administrators, and serving, most importantly, our kids. They should be at the center of everything we do.
Thanks, Senator Kedora. Next up on my screen, I see Representative Hamilton.
Thanks so much, Crystal. So I'm going to rib my friends and colleagues, Representative Delaney and Senator Kedora, for not following instructions, going into a little deeper policy than we were asked in our introduction. So I'll try to thread the needle a little bit there, not as much, but of course they had great things to say and I support what they shared. First, I just want to say how glad I am to be here. And I want to take a moment as a passionate public school parent and legislator who supports public schools to thank you for your important work. I've been involved with you all for many years to some degree, not as much as I'd like, but I so appreciate the important work that you do, being a voice for parents in the community and for our schools, and working with all of the stakeholders in our community to lead us, help lead us in a good direction. And then I want to thank our school board member, Tracy Horth-Kruger, for her remarks. It was really interesting to hear about the school board conference you attended. And then I want to just tell Dr. Woodson how much I loved what she shared earlier, the successes from all of our schools. Bravo. Thanks for sharing. We need to hear that. We're glad to hear that. We know that our teachers and our students are working hard, and to hear about those successes is really important, especially right now as we're coming off such a tough last year. So I represent, hopefully my dog's not too loud. I represent House District 87, which is, I'm so sorry, part of Washington and part of Lawrence Townships. And and please, Dr. Woodson, the one other thing I wanted to say, if there's a chance for me to visit a drum circle, I'm there. But seriously, on a couple of issues, I want to lift up, Senator Kedora talked about teacher pay. I know that Representative Delaney and Representative Porter and myself, as long as we've been thinking about teacher pay for many years now, have been fighting for this. And we have to call out the fact that the federal government gave the state of Indiana money that at the very last minute allowed us to finally fund what we had been fighting for so long. And I'm very thankful for that. Both the increase that will allow us to pay teachers more, it'll stop in a moment, and the funding of the complexity index that we finally catching up to issues very far behind. And then I'll mention a couple of issues that I want to delve into farther, but I want to give Crystal a chance to ask her questions. And that's frustration with voucher expansion we can dig into. My big frustration that with all of this money, we didn't take a dime to put more towards pre-K, which is such a proven investment, data for decades from other states now, and we're still not doing it like we should be in Indiana. And then the scary road of ESAs that we're going down here in Indiana, the education savings accounts. So I will leave it at that. Thanks, and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Representative Hamilton. And then last but certainly not least, I'm going to pass it to Representative Porter.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And first of all, I'm very grateful to be with you this evening. My heart beats for Washington Township schools and all the work that you as a community have done over the years. The accolades that Dr. Woodson and school board members, and particularly you parents, the ones that are here and the ones that may not be here, that have something else to do, that continue to advocate and move the needle forward when it comes to public education. I can just say this, and with our public education is in my DNA. Okay, I've been around for since 1992. I was elected, and have worked on public education issues from day one. Served as the chair of the House Education Committee on numerous years. Now Ways and Means in regards to the dollars, and always fighting to make sure that we have more dollars into public education, and to try to continue to have a firewall to the expansion of vouchers and charter schools and other dollars that are being expended, diverted to other education opportunities, as one would say. I think, and I'm gonna move very quickly, just a couple of things that we received $3 billion from the American Rescue Plan. We've already gotten $1.9 billion thus far. we have the opportunity to continue to fund public education, to fund full-day kindergarten, and which was illuminated earlier. We study it to death. We put $20 million into pre-K programs. They reverted $7 million. And so, and they still call preschool education a pilot. Let's get off the pilot. Let's have the process and move forward to produce children in great educational needs that we all have for all our children. So with that, I'll wait and answer those questions. And hopefully we get back with my comments, regain some of our time. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So I'm going to jump into some of the questions that we have prepared. I'm going to respectfully ask that our representatives keep their answers to a couple of minutes. We don't have a timer tonight. We've got a smaller panel than usual. Sometimes in the past we've timed answers. I'm going to trust y'all to, speak succinctly and share your thoughts. If you participants have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I will ask my fellow board members to help me if I should miss questions that come through in the chat. Please feel free to unmute and jump in if you see a question in chat that I haven't gotten to yet. And to start off, we're going to start with a question that I came up with, and I already know the answer, but I want everybody to hear the answer from all of you. And that question is, we often hear from people that they don't contact their legislators regarding public education issues because they know already that their legislator is a public education ally, so they don't think contacting their legislator is meaningful. They don't think it makes a difference. And I would love to hear what you all would say to that. I'm going to pass that one to Representative Hamilton first, if that's all right.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Crystal. I'll speak for myself. I'm sure others share the sentiment. We absolutely want to hear from you. It's often a hard battle, and it's good to know that we have allies. That's one point, but also it gives us more ammunition, right? If we read 30 personalized emails from our constituents that they care about an issue, that gives us more of a voice when we're reaching out, when we're speaking on the House floor, when we're talking to our colleagues. I want to hear your personal stories, your anecdotes about particular policies and how they affect your family. Those mean something. They're very important. So please, please, please keep us informed of your positions.
Any of our other legislators want to chime in on that one?
I think it's very crucial that we hear from each and every one of you, whomever, because the detractors say my constituents in my district. And so, but we know basically what you are saying, but it's good, as Hamilton said, to hear from you, because we can say, well, this is what the district of Washington Township is saying. This is what the parents are saying. This is how they feel. And we have to personalize things, Crystal, and individuals, because people, when you just talk in general, it kind of people just say, okay, here we go. One is pontificating. However, when you come and you have specific deductive reasoning and you have good data, and yeah, remember, everybody's to talk about data. And so, we can create our own data, and we can do it through our surveys. So when we send out our surveys, please respond to the surveys, because we calculate those surveys, and that's our ammunition to help fight the supermajority in your General Assembly.
Wonderful, thank you. Give me just one moment. I'm going to get my list in front of me here. Okay, another question that we had. Currently, Indiana is one of only a few states that passes textbook and materials fees on to parents. How do you feel about this, and how can we change it? Let's start with Senator Kedora on this one.
I think we should eliminate textbook fees across the state of Indiana. we can make it affordable to, we can afford it in the state budget. As a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, I can tell you that the state invests hundreds of millions of dollars in programs that unfortunately do not bring back the return on investment. And I pointed out to my colleagues many of those programs during the last budget season. In my former capacity, I served as a city controller, so finances is an area of expertise. I know we can afford it. I think it's the right thing to do. It removes a barrier for so many parents to be able to spend money as needed on other critical items. I've seen on social media when families in North Central and the Washington Township schools posted that they got a $700 or $800 or $900 bill for textbooks. And there are many families that are struggling. We should make education more affordable, not less affordable. To conclude, to stick within my time limit, this last session, my friends and in the Senate Republican side increased the threshold for the voucher program to a family that earns about $145,000 a year. $145,000 a year. And studies have shown that over 90% of all of the students in the voucher program basically attend private religious schools. So when we look at our district and look at schools, whether it's North Central or other schools, and you have 20, 30, 40, 50% of the student population qualify for free and reduced lunch, then I think it's very clear that waiving the fees can help families, struggling families across the state. That's my position. I think is the right thing to do. And that's a position that I'm comfortable advocating and fighting for.
Would any of our other legislators like to speak to that? I see Carrie's ready to go.
Just real quick, I want to share, I have co-authored legislation in the past to do away with textbook fees. When the bills came out for Washington Township, a parent who's on this call right now posted about it, and it prompted me to draft a new bill for this year that I will be a lead author on. I think we need to keep fighting for this. It's really important. Senator Kedora gave a great comparison of the supermajority's priorities, giving wealthier families the ability to go to private schools versus helping all families in Indiana be able to have, a better quality of life by covering those expenses that are a real burden for so many Hoosier families.
Thank you.
I have,
ahead.
I'm sorry, just 40 seconds. I have offered amendments in the budget to get rid of the textbook tax, because that's what it is. And we can propose legislation, but it will never get heard. So our goal is to make sure that we get them to make some bad votes when addressing the needs of our constituents, not only for Washington Township, but throughout the state. And I think, with a $4 billion surplus, I think it might cost maybe $400 million to do this, and which would be a great relief to parents in this state.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
This is Ed. Let me be brief.
Sure.
I've worked with Greg Porter for 13 years. Nothing has angered him more than this issue. He's been right about it. And I'll continue to support him and others who criticize the idea of taxing our parents for textbooks. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll say a thanks to the parent on this call who shared their frustrations publicly. See, this is what happens when you reach out, you let your legislators know how you feel about things. It really does make an impact. I always try to remind folks, these people that we have on the call, we certainly respect them. We know that their titles carry weight, but we also need to remember that they work for us. We pay them through our taxes and they are accountable to us. So you should never feel like you are imposing when you are reaching out to a legislator to let them know your thoughts. It is literally their job to listen to you. So I'll get off my soapbox now. So this one has been discussed a little bit. So I'm going to kind of ask the folks who haven't spoken on this to go first, but how do you feel about the possibility of school board candidates having to declare a political party?
Well, I haven't addressed it yet, so I'll just say I'm extremely concerned. I think, you know, if anything should be not political, it's our schools and our school boards. And it's a very dangerous road for us to go down as we see how divided our political system is. To structurally add that division into our schools makes absolutely no sense, and I think would be very harmful.
Thank you.
This is Ed. I mentioned it briefly. We don't need to politicize public education any more than it's already been politicized. I think this would be very destructive of the political parties. Can you believe that? As well as of the school boards, okay? We don't need this fight. And so I'm very, very much opposed to this. And I think it's just a reaction to anger about things that aren't really there, such as, you know, critical race theory and so forth. We really should not do this. And I'm afraid it's going to be, the debate will be a major distraction from adequately funding and supporting our schools, which is the debate we need to have.
I agree with Ed. It is a manufactured issue to move us off of what we need to do for public education. Used to vote for school board members in the primary, moved it to the general election because they wanted more participation. Now they want to do something else to politicize it even more. It's just continued to move to create an issue that isn't there and manufacture it for one's own self-serving needs, and to, as Ed said, Gary said, to distract us from what the real issues are when it comes to education and education outcomes for our children.
Excellent, thank you. Because it was mentioned, one of the questions that we received is that we see in many states are taking steps to try to control what is taught in schools regarding race and American history. Is this something we can expect to see in Indiana? And I'll let anyone who wants to jump in.
Well, I'm rubbing my forehead because I'll be shocked if I don't hear it. But I've read the substance of the Texas law, which basically says it's illegal to think. So we're going to talk about race in this country, and we got to talk about it in our schools. And the idea that we can't talk about it is insulting to ourselves, our democracy, and our schools. This is another made-up fight that we don't need, and we'll just have to do what we have to do on this. But the Indiana General Assembly fooled around with these issues in the 1950s when the issue was communism, and their actions then were futile. These are similarly futile. So let's hope we just move past this.
Did anyone else want to make comment? All right. Okay, let me get back to my list here. Give me just 1 second. Another question that we received here in Indiana, redistricting has been kind of a hot topic lately. It's that time in the decade where that comes up again, and we've recently went through that process here. So the question was asked, how does redistricting affect Washington Township particularly?
I'll be more than happy to share a couple of comments, if that's okay. So I serve on the Senate Elections Committee, and I traveled the state with my colleague, Senator J.D. Ford on the Senate side, and we had several members on the House side who also traveled the state to hear to constituents about all of these issues. Specifically as it relates to Washington Township, I think there was not much impact in terms of representation or change in representation over the last few years. We still have strong public school advocates in elected office that will continue to champion this both in the Senate and the House. My concern is much larger than specific township or county. Many of you know that I came to the United States personally as an immigrant. I'm a proud American citizen, and it hurts my heart to see that we are eroding the institutions of democracy by basically predetermining the outcomes of elections for the 10 years. So again, not to politicize this, but many people across the country were concerned that the 2020 election was stolen. And I raised my voice in the Senate and I said, well, what do you call predetermining the outcome of the elections for the next 10 years? Isn't that stealing elections? And if it's that not, then I don't know what it is. To me, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, gerrymandering political districts to circumvent election results is a form of political corruption. And it erodes our institutions of democracy, and it should not be tolerated. And that's why I introduced multiple times during my first session and during the special session, the idea of creating an external independent redistricting commission. And we also endorsed and supported the maps that were drawn by an external citizens commission that was led by Republicans, Democrats, and non-affiliated individuals from across the state of Indiana. So I urge you to think through this final point, that the root cause of all evil when it comes to bad public policy in Indiana, in my view, is the issue of gerrymandered districts, because that incentivizes legislators from safe districts to only appeal to a very small population during the primary and disregard the hundreds of thousands of voices during the general elections. And it will only yield in elected officials who promote extreme public policy. And for that, I think we need to continue to work hard on advocating for an independent process, a fair process, a transparent process.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Kedora. Representative Hamilton.
I'll just add briefly first, just to second everything Senator Kedora shared, and just to highlight that with these new maps in Indiana, we have arguably the most gerrymandered maps in the history of the nation. One political scientist, that was his analysis. And the result of that is that our government is not representative and that almost all voters are disenfranchised because they won't have a choice. Full stop, right? And most of our general election races now, there will be not a choice. And that's not good for democracy. That's not good for our schools. And it's a really big concern. So we'll see if, maybe we'll see big population shifts because of people working from home more and then moving elsewhere because they have more flexibility. But if not, we have some pretty much baked in non-competitive districts, and again, bad for democracy.
Thank you. Another question we received is this one. In some other states in the US, we have seen legislation pass that singles out transgender students and their participation in school sports. Do you believe that we should have similar legislation in Indiana?
This is Ed Delaney. No. We don't need anything more divisive, and we don't need to pretend that our school staff don't know how to control the environment in their school to benefit every student. They do know how. They're succeeding in that. So why create a problem that is being more than adequately handled?
And it breaks my heart to think of the students that would feel targeted by this. It's just not acceptable. Hopefully we won't go down this road this year or ever.
I too agree with my two colleagues, but I know I had a brief conversation on the House side with Representative Cherry, who has also kind of thought about it. He kind of threw it out there, Crystal, about some piece of legislation. So don't know if he's going to do it, but he did throw it out there. But I definitely agree with my House members, my colleagues, in regards to this thought process. Again, getting another distraction when it comes to education and what they're not doing for public education.
Thank you. We're going to pivot topics a little bit because something that we hear a lot about in Indiana is workforce development. We know that Indiana is a state that works. And the question that was submitted was, how should we balance workforce development needs of our state with supporting the whole child and their love of learning. How do we find the happy medium between the two?
Well, maybe I'll sound like a cynical politician. I think most of the workforce programs are decorative. They're small, underfunded, confusing, overlapping, and are just mainly talking points. I'm happy to say, I think for the most part, districts like Washington Township are dealing with this as they have been. You got the J. Everett Light Center, you got programs, culinary programs, other programs. I think the school districts are dealing with it fine. I just think there's a dance of people who are pretending that there's something new going on, that colleges are some kind of a new invention, or alternatives to college are some kind of a new invention. So I think much of it is myth and pandering. One problem that bothers me, there are some members of the legislature I frankly think want to turn our schools into training academies for their particular business, which is, I think, highly inappropriate. So that is part of the pressure. And it's going to increase because we have employers now, a number of whom are in the legislature, who just can't find workers, perhaps because they don't pay enough. And they're going to start turning to the schools to solve their very particular problem. You're right, your question was right. Put the focus on the kid, educate the kid, let them see the opportunities, let them, with the help of guidance counselors, decide. I'll end on that note. Our guidance system is radically understaffed. And the cheapest and most effective way to deal with this whole career topic is to have an adequate number of guidance counselors with a reasonable number of students and enough time to work with them and their parents. If that happened, most of these programs with all these initials could go away.
I'll chime in, Crystal, add a couple of points. So there's a report that was commissioned recently, funded by the Lilly Endowment, supported or managed by the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. And the research was conducted by the American Enterprise Institute and the Brookings Institute. And specifically, they analyzed Indiana's data. The name of the research project is called Indiana GPS Project. So if you Google it, you'll come across several reports. The first finding of the report is that Indiana ranks 42nd in the nation in workforce development. Despite the hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that we've made, we have not made critical strategic investments. Why? Because we want to have a headline in the news to say, we attracted X or Y or Z company with X numbers of jobs, but we can never fill these jobs. So what is the point of spending $500 million on attracting jobs that we can't fill in the first place because the workforce is not ready for those jobs? So one of the recommendations of the report is to make critical investments in education, because there's a strong correlation between economic prosperity and educational attainment. The higher educational attainment we have in our state, the more prosperous our state will be. And then how does that connect to our children? Well, I can tell you this: one, we're not making critical investments in child care services and pre-K education. The American Rescue Plan, I'm happy to report to you, I'm not sure if you've seen that, but I posted about a few days ago on social media. The Family and Social Services Administration, a state agency, will be receiving a total of $540 million to specifically fund child care services, and pre-K providers will qualify to apply for these grants to upgrade their quality of service so that they can qualify to receive state funding for student scholarships. That money was applied for directly by the state agency, and that's on top and in addition to the $3 billion that we received from the American Rescue Plan that funded the state budget. So I think families are severely impacted by lack of childcare services across the state. And for many hardworking families, childcare is expensive. So how can we talk about workforce development and people being at the workplace if my salary and my low income is not sufficient to basically pay for childcare? It might be more cost effective to stay at home rather than have a job that doesn't even fully cover childcare expenses. So there is a straight correlation between childcare services, pre-K, K through 12 investments, and then higher return on workforce development. and all of it must be connected. Unfortunately, our current system of workforce development, as Representative Delaney said, is fragmented, is not fully evaluated for its effectiveness, and we have different agencies and different boards moving in different directions. And we heard a testimony on this just 2 weeks ago in the Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee. So I look forward to working with my colleagues on introducing maybe different piece of legislation to tie all of these loose ends and make more effective maximize the spending we have on workforce development while balancing the lives of our kids and investing in their education.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your comments along with Ed. What we've had in the state of Indiana over the last 5 or 6 years, Division of Workforce Development, Workforce Development, Economic Development Council, Department of Education, all of them have their own programs when it came to workforce development. And so many times I ask them, a state that works for whom? Because it's not working for everyone within our state. So, I mean, you had Representative Sullivan, who's now Secretary Sullivan, you had Representative Braun, and you had all these people over the years. Every year they came back trying to piecemeal this initiative in regards to workforce development and development of the workforce here in the state of Indiana. I totally concur with the senator and about what needs to happen in regards to people working in childcare. It all goes hand in hand. So until we align all the programs in a meaningful way, we will continue to stay fragmented, and it'll be like an old Remington typewriter. We'll be pecking at it and not moving it.
Crystal, I just want to add just a small piece to kind of highlight to add to these comments, and that is another lens to look at it is the short-sightedness of the last few years of thinking about workforce issues. We need to think long-term, and Senator Kedora sort of hit on this, talking about pre-K, for example. And I would add to that the millions, hundreds of millions we've pulled out of our K-12 system into vouchers and other investments. We need to look at the whole child through their educational experience. We know that pre-K, for example, those children that get that high quality pre-K education are more likely to attain a higher education level, be more successful in their professional lives, and make more money and pay back in taxes to the system. One other thing, if it's okay, I would just want to address a really great comment that came in about gerrymandering. And that is one thing we didn't lift up, but all of the legislators on this call, I know for a fact, have fought for the last several years, is not just to not have gerrymandered maps from Republicans, but to make sure political parties aren't drawing the maps. That's a problem. In states where Democrats are in control, the maps are gerrymandered. We know this. Political parties should not draw the maps. So thanks for lifting that up in your comment, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you catching that. So here in Indiana, we do have state mandated standardized testing. I think those of us that are parents are very familiar with this because it's a several day process. And in some cases, like with the iRead test, it's necessary for advancing to the next grade and ultimately graduating. And then we've recently had a reprieve a couple of years ago when the pandemic hit. So I would love to hear, and I think the other parents on the call would love to hear as well, what role you feel, if any, state mandated testing should play in our educational system and how we evaluate public schools. Anyone want to tackle that one?
I think Ed dropped off, but I
was going to say, I think we lost Representative Delaney.
And I apologize. I got distracted by his message. I missed the first part of your question. So if I missed the point, you can correct me, but I'll just say that I think when I think about testing, I think what we need to think about it in terms of how do we look at the results of tests and help our children achieve better and not ever be punitive with test results. And we've certainly had too much testing. We've gotten away from that to some extent the last couple of years, finally. but I'll just leave it at that. I think there's probably some other strong opinions about this as well, or stronger even.
Sure. Did anyone else want to speak on the role of state mandated testing?
In regards to testing, we used to have money for remediation and to help. Well, at one point you had a spring test, then you had a fall test, and and from my perspective, at this point, it's like, okay, so we have all these tests. What we test our children to death. I think March and April is one of the worst times of the year. So all these standardized testing, what are the real results that we have? And if you do test, how are you going to help in regards to remediation? Now they changed it. We used to have like $35 million to help in regards to remediation, to help for regards to testing. We spent millions of dollars on testing programs, and we had essentially negative results. Nothing's really come out of it. We've just really poured a lot of money into a black hole, big rabbit hole. So I think we need to, if we're going to test, it needs to be in conjunction with teachers, parents, and it should be everybody involved in this, not just someone that has a company that comes in and create a test just for that time or that snapshot in the moment.
Thank you. Another question we received is that someone had said they're hearing of a possible bill that would allow school districts to have their own individual teacher licensing or certification process. Do you think that this would hurt or help our public school districts?
I'll be brief. I'll take a quick, share a quick response. I think centralizing and keeping the certification centralized is best for our state. You want to be sure that the quality of education is uniform across the state. If you leave it to different districts, then the outcome or the product of education, which is a student, might have completely different qualities and level of education than students from other districts. So I think it would be beneficial to maintain and centralize the certification process. We want to ensure the quality of our teachers. We have very high quality teachers in Washington Township. We want to preserve that, but I'm not sure that every other community across the state would maintain that level of quality. So thinking about it from a statewide perspective, while I appreciate any sincere intentions to create more opportunities to recruit teachers, I think many of my friends at the state legislature continue to dance around the issue, thinking that we have a shortage in teachers and staff because we don't have enough people interested in education. But the truth is that they neglect to understand the underlying causes of why many staff and teachers and support staff are no longer interested in our educational system. They have the heart to serve. They want to be in our system. But when they see the constant politicization of the system, the lack of appreciation for their hard work on a daily basis, and the constant mandates, we live in a state that supposedly should be calling for less mandates based on the political ideology and control. Yet when it comes to education, I've heard from so many educators, please give us a break. We are not even done implementing the previous mandates. You tested several, you used us as experiments to test the school performance. And now 10 years later, you just told us it didn't work, but you punished us for some of the performance metrics over the last 10 years. So I think it is better to centralize it, to keep it uniform, and to truly appreciate our teachers and our staff and our administrators, fund them well, give them the opportunity to lead, and let's not politicize the system so that they can feel empowered, that they can lead with passion and protect their health, especially during a global pandemic where many folks felt that we need to protect teachers and educators and staff from being safe at the school. So when you call for no vaccines and no masks, and you want just people to show up at the school system, that disregards the health of many of our teachers and many of our staff. So we need to be mindful of that.
Thank you. All right. Will we ever be able to have an elected state superintendent of public instruction? And for those who may be unfamiliar, that is a position that at one time was an elected position, and recently in the past couple of years has transitioned to an appointed position.
I think, unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever, not in my lifetime, not my time in General Assembly, reverse that role. It was something that the supermajority had tried to do for a number of years. And even though elected, it goes back to when Tony Bennett and Mitch Daniels. He chose Tony Bennett and to run for superintendent of public instruction, and it happened. So, and he won. So I think it'd be very difficult to pivot back to the way it was. The point that we had to do is try to make sure that there is some level of accountability with the appointment. And they're not only, and I think there are many other states that have appointed superintendents of public instruction.
Thank you. Well, that is through, we've worked through my list of submitted questions, but I want to open it up to the floor. If you want to drop something in the chat or you want to unmute and ask a question, now is the time to do that.
Crystal, can I jump back while we're waiting for maybe questions to come in? I was kind of alarmed and caught off guard by the question, frankly, about flexibility with teacher standards.
Sure.
I haven't heard that concern that might come forward. It's a concern for me.
Sure.
I think, we've worked hard to finally get what we hope is starting to be good pay for our teachers. We expect them to be well trained. We know that one of the strongest correlations between students, the strongest connections for student success is the teacher in the classroom. They have one of the biggest impacts on our students throughout their educational career. And we want to keep those standards high and allow, as districts now can have higher standards if they want, I'm sure, for positions, but we certainly don't want to backtrack. That will not be good for the profession that we respect and need to be strong. And it certainly won't be good for our students or our state as a result.
Thank you. While you guys are formulating your questions, I'm dropping a link into the chat. You may not know who your state senator or state representative are, but there's an easy website where you type in your address and you can find out those things. And I found that doing different kinds of advocacy work over the years, we're very familiar, obviously, with presidential elections, presidential races. We are familiar with those federal level offices like senator and like congressional representative at the federal level, but folks aren't always aware of who their state level representatives are, but it's most often those state level representatives who are involved with decision making that's going to affect your day-to-day life in really impactful ways. And in the case of education, going to affect not only you, but your children. So I really encourage you to get to know who your representative and senator are at the state level, follow them on their social media channels. A lot of these folks have opportunities where you can meet up with them and meet them and talk to them directly. Take advantage of those because these guys are the ones that are involved in a lot of important decision-making that carries over to our day-to-day lives. All right, we had a question come in the chat. Oh, yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Representative.
I just 15 seconds.
Sure.
We have, in regards to teacher standard, local groups, we have over 330 school corporations, if you count charter schools, and everything. So, I mean, that would be devastating for that to occur. Everyone has their own standards, and one teacher moves to somewhere else, and do they meet that standard or not? So, that it'd be a high level of devastation.
Thank you. Question came in the chat. What are ideas for addressing teacher shortages across the state that are bad now and are almost certain to get worse as burnout during COVID takes its toll?
I would say start with Senator Kedora suggested earlier and give teachers a break from policies that impact their daily lives in ways that make it harder for them to do their jobs, or even just more and more changes every year. Let them settle in, get through this really tough time they're dealing with right now, and let them be the professionals that they are. Certainly trying to get to competitive pay and continuing to make sure we stay in a competitive pay state. I'm not quite sure when things shake out with this latest budget, where we're going to land amongst states. I'd love to be high up in the top half of states when it comes to pay, and making sure our teachers know that they're respected and appreciated and supported with training support. And, at these tough times, I know a lot of this comes down to the local level, and I'm so thankful that our district is really appreciative of our educators. But this is going to continue to be an issue. We're going to get through this budget cycle and find out we still have work to do. And so I don't have all the answers, but we need to know that there's more work to do.
I'll jump in quickly to remind everyone on this call that even with the roughly speaking, $1.5 billion that have been allocated to traditional public schools or to public schools, generally speaking, that only brings us back to the level of 2012 funding when factoring inflation. So I hope that everybody understands that point. When we talk about teachers, the governor, who is Republican, who I stood in his defense this last session, and I said it proudly on the Senate floor, my colleagues were dancing around the issue by thinking through, how can we save a few dollars here and there by consolidating transportation or buildings? While I don't want to discredit any idea, I'm always supportive of any efficiencies in any school system, period. No ifs, no buts. But I use the analogy of buying a home. You buy a home, you have a mortgage, and God forbid you get laid off from your job. The first action when you lose revenues is not to go buy a second home and extend and get a second mortgage. Your first action item should be, how do I cover my existing mortgage? And what we have done with our traditional public schools across the state is that we have a constitutional requirement, as was mentioned earlier in the call. I think Shelley mentioned it in Article 8 of the Constitution, that we started 10 years ago. We went down the path of saying, if my Senate Republican friends would like to expand the voucher and charter schools, my message to them was, why have you not fully funded the traditional public school system first? Hold them accountable, and then after fully funding them, be sure that you can basically hold them accountable for their performance. But don't start taking money away and create more systems, because you know what happened last session? We had charter schools showing up before our committee saying, you are starving us the same way you starved traditional public schools. And now we created multiple systems with the same revenue level, and we are starving all systems. So that's why I think it is required of us, based on our Constitution, to fulfill our initial obligation. And we have to be fair. You can't convince me that you raised the voucher threshold to $145,000 for a family, which the median family income in the state of Indiana hovers around $56,000. So you can't convince me that you raised it to $145,000 to support families to send their kids to private schools, and that should be a choice for families who can afford it, definitely. And then not waive textbook fees for families who will qualify for Medicaid, SNAP, and TANF. I think what I'm calling for is fairness and transparency and fulfilling our financial obligations. As a fiscally responsible person who worked for 2 Republican administrations and 1 Democratic mayor, it baffles me that we speak about fiscal responsibility, but when it comes to the basic ABCs of funding our obligations as a state, we tend to default on those. And I will continue to remind my Democratic and Republican friends, let's stick with our Constitution, with our legal mandates, of funding our school system and hold schools accountable. But when two charter schools defraud the state of Indiana to the tune of $150 million, and I introduced an amendment to bring accountability for these schools to be held accountable. They stole money from the state. My amendment was rejected. But when it comes to traditional public schools, they want to politicize it by holding our schools more accountable. So I think it is not a level playing field. It is biased and is very politicized.
I like to circle back to teacher shortage. Yes, we did give some tuition support for teachers this time, but it's going to be short-lived, as Representative Hamilton said. In 2 years, we'll be right back here trying to figure out about the pay for teachers. The Teachers Compensation Commission has diagnosed the problem for about 2 years. The governor has not done what he to do in regards to funding it at a meaningful level. So what was happening as we continue, and for 2 years, then we figure out with the governor, then he'll be gone. There'll be somebody else that has that problem. So what's happening is that legislators, supermajority in the government has continued to kick the can down the road until they get out of office. Then it falls back on those individuals who are still there working on behalf of teachers and educators.
Thank you. We have another question come into the chat. Is it appropriate for Indiana to continue to hold on to its budget surplus for a rainy day fund? Last time I looked outside, it seems to be pouring. That's from the question asker, not me. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
From our perspective, we have a $4 billion surplus right now. No, we should not hold on to those dollars. We should take care of the issues that we need, get rid of the textbook tax. We should adequately compensate teachers. We should put money away so we can, because the one thing that people, my colleagues talk about is it sustainable? Well, you know, if you have $4 billion and you take $500 million and put it into account and generate up to $20 million a year, and, you know, they help with teacher pay, it is sustainable. So it's not, you know, they like to take the dollars and like to take pictures of it and to talk about a AAA bonding and talk about how it's great to have businesses within the state of Indiana. But when it comes to it, we continue to get rid of business business taxes and continue to look at personal property taxes and give that and hurt our constituent with those programs. So no, you know, you're right. It is raining. It is storming, but we can also do the right thing with this. We have collected $1.9 billion from the federal government, the other from rescue plan. The other money is forthcoming. We have unprecedented times when it comes to economics in our state. Once in a lifetime. We need to seize this opportunity and make sure that we do it in a meaningful way to help build some sustainability for the future.
Thank you.
I'll add just one quick point. I managed the city's budget at the city a few years ago, and I have the honor of serving with Representative Hamilton and Representative Porter. Both of them are in the budget committee from the House side, and I serve from the Senate side. I consider myself fiscally responsible. I think there should be an appropriate level of reserves, because if there are crises, just like in our personal lives, we need to be sure that just like our school system, just like any other business or nonprofit, we need to be mindful of rainy day. But I wholeheartedly agree with Representative Greg Porter and the person who asked the question. The question becomes, what is an appropriate level of reserves that needs to be maintained? Because if you go above that and above what the standard is in the profession, then to me, it becomes more, I will use the analogy of stuffing cash in a mattress. What's the value of stuffing cash in a mattress? You don't get return on investment. And I'm not suggesting that we engage in risky, bad behavior as a state in terms of how we invest our dollars. But I think, when there's deferred maintenance on capital, when there are delayed investments in education, when there are delayed investments in workforce development, just like delaying fixing your roof or HVAC or anything else, the more that you delay, the costly it will be, more costly to fix it in the future. So my concern is not whether or not we should have a reserve. I think the answer is we should have a reserve. It should be fiscally responsible, and anything above and beyond that must be reinvested primarily in education and infrastructure and critical strategic investments that will expand the state's capacity. Because I firmly believe if we continue the status quo today, I'm concerned that not only we're lagging behind Midwestern states, but we're also going to lag behind the nation and behind the globe, and we will be left behind. And I don't want Indiana, our beloved state, to be on the last 10 of 50 states almost on everything. I think we can do much better.
Go ahead, Carrie, and I'll follow up.
Okay, thanks, Greg. So just to add on the great points already made, I too believe, I think we all do, that we need to have some surplus, and that it's been much too much for a long time. And as it kept growing and we still weren't investing in Hoosiers, it became a real problem. So we have upwards of, and I don't know what the number is now after this rough year of pandemic and significant job loss early on, et cetera, but 40% of Hoosiers just a couple of years ago were living very much on the edge. 40% of Hoosier families were living on the edge. And so for years, we've had the opportunity to invest in things like pre-K and a child care tax credit that would have gone a long way to help those families begin to thrive. And then the long-term benefits of that would pay off for our state, for our economy, for our families into the future. And we haven't made those investments. And so today is the time. We need to start, it's an uphill battle still, of course, with the composition of the legislature, but boy, oh boy, if at this moment in time, after the realities of the pandemic have settled in, we know that more families are struggling. We got to make those investments to give every family a chance to thrive. And that's just not the case today.
Right.
Every hardworking family.
Yeah. Scott, Tia, and Ray, we have about $36 billion budget. If you have a $36 billion budget, you look at your reserves should be about 13 and 14% of that. That's what you really need in the bank, which would probably be about 1.2, I'll say 2 billion. I'm gonna round it up. So we're looking at least $2 billion that we can do some other things with. Our revenue forecast for July, August, and September of this year, of the state's fiscal year, is above what we projected by $427 million. That's just the 3 months. Last month, our revenues that we projected was above forecast by over 200 million. I think it's 224 million. So the dollars are coming in, but like I said, we're not utilizing the dollars the way that we should do. Now, remember, we are going to wind up those individuals who file state taxes. We're going to give money back to you to the tune between $130 to $150, $60 next year when you file your taxes. So we are going to return those dollars after we raised so much sand about it. They finally said yes. So, but that's just give you a snapshot on where we are with those dollars, how the dollars that we do have at the state, what we're using it in general for. And I say we because I can't separate myself. I'm part of the General Assembly. I may not agree with it, but this is what's happening.
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification. So before we wrap up, Shelley, if it's all right with you, I'm going to make one more quick pitch for the Public Policy Committee. I'm going to drop my link in here again, and also say that I'd love for you to mark your calendars for the weekend of November 13th. I will be hanging out at our public libraries with some of these postcards ready for you guys to write your legislators and the governor about the issues that concern you. If you heard something on this call tonight that is concerning to you, then we would love to have you come write a short note on one of these postcards. I'll have the stamps for you. I'll take it to the post office. I'll have pens. All you need to do is come and share your thoughts. And I would just really love to hear from these representatives in the few weeks after that their mailbox has been flooded with these. So if you heard something you heard tonight that you agreed with, if you heard something tonight that you didn't agree with, and you want to make your thoughts known to your representative, this is a great time to come meet some other parents and get involved. So we'll have more information about that in our on our social media and on our Facebook page as well. But we would really love, personally, I would love Representative Hamilton to be able to take big handfuls of red postcards to her colleagues and say, look how many parents don't want to pay school textbook fees anymore.
Yeah.
So we would just really love to have you join us, whether you're interested in the Public Policy Committee or not. And then one final time, I'm dropping the link to the Public Policy Committee form. If you're interested in getting more involved, if you want to commit to sharing these things with your friends, or regularly emailing and calling your legislators, or possibly even showing up at the State House to support a bill or speak on a bill, but we would love to know that. I would say that being on this committee and serving in this way has been really eye-opening and has taught me more than I ever thought I wanted to know about how state government works. But it also is really empowering to understand, because when you understand how things work, then you know how to advocate for change. So we would love to have you join us. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of our representatives who joined us tonight. We really thank you for taking time out of your evening to be with us. And I'd also really like to thank Mrs. Horth Kruger, Dr. Woodson, and all of you parents and staff who have joined us tonight. There are a lot of places you could be on a Wednesday evening. I know most of us are parents, so we just appreciate you taking this time away to join us.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, legislators. If you have any final comments about, maybe in a minute, what parents can do, what you want to see from us as advocates, because we've had these conversations before where, you know, we've heard that, yes, a lobbyist walks in a room and they kind of just sit there and drink their coffee and hear the lobbyist spiel. But when a parent walks in the room, or someone who they're not used to seeing, that actually gets attention and might make a difference. So I don't know if we can just, you know, add maybe one more comment about that.
Join the Public Policy Committee.
Exactly.
No, but I just want to second what you said. It absolutely matters. We want to see you and hear from you. And thanks, everybody.
I know last year was pretty tough due to COVID, but I think things are going to open up again relatively soon. When legislators see someone they never seen before, they ask questions like, who are they, why are they here, or what's going on? And I think parental involvement is really crucial. You have us in general, but I would encourage parents to, if they have someone that's in another part of the state, that is in another county, and you have relatives, have your relatives call them, because it's very important. A coalition is important in these days. If you don't have a coalition, you don't have much. You'll be stuck in the mud. So at this point, continue with gathering each other, get a coalition together, communicate, and then have a strategy for other constituents, the 6.8 million people that represent in Indiana, have them contact their local legislators.
And from my side, I just want to say thank you. I've been extremely honored to serve our community and our district. And I'm personally connected to our school through my daughters and many others that I see on the call. I see Christy here with the foundation and others. So I want to give a shout out to the Advancement Center. And also just want to let you know that all of us on this call, all legislators, we offer internships every single session, more geared towards college students. So if you have college students in your household that are interested, the General Assembly pays, I think, $350 a week. So it's really good money. And I used to be an intern 12 years ago in the Indiana State Senate. So it's an unbelievably amazing experience. And then for your middle school and high school kids, we can help you organize field trips to the State House. And there's a page program that I'm not sure if they're gonna reinstitute it because of COVID protocols, but you can send your kids and they can shadow their legislator for a day. So I'll keep you posted on these efforts. Your families and your kids are like my family and my kids. I appreciate you and I look forward to serving you. And if we ever deviate or we say something silly or we don't perform to the best of our abilities, call, text, and you know how to find us and keep us in check so that we can serve you to the best of what we can. And I appreciate each one of you.
Thank you. So last month I forgot Taryn. I apologize, Taryn. Taryn is our treasurer, and she just has a little something to share about fundraising for our organization, and she can tell you what that goes for.
Yes, real quick, and no problem, Shelley, from last month. But yes, just as a reminder, as Shelley went over our 4 pillars and our mission statement, Parent Council Network is a 501c4. So we do not benefit from a lot of the traditional fundraisers that like PTOs may benefit for, your dine to donate type of things, because people who donate to us do not get that back as a tax credit. So nonetheless, we exist supported by donations. We run a very shoestring budget. I think we, for the year, we estimated about $900 operating budget. We've already raised about 45% of that through donations. I'm going to include our link if anyone wants to donate. Just to give you a very quick idea, that money pays for our website fees. It pays for our Zoom account. It allows us to boost Facebook posts for our meetings so that more parents see them. It allows us to participate in events like the Great North Run or the homecoming tailgate and talk to parents there, or to send flyers home with our elementary students. So very basic costs there for the year, but we definitely appreciate any donations that anyone is willing to send our way.
Thank you, Taryn. And again, sorry about last month.
No problem.
And so I just want to say also that next month, our focus is going to be on mental health. We have not finalized our program or our panel, but we know we had just done last month a focus of safety and security, and we know that we can't have that conversation without addressing mental health, just of our community, of our students, of our teachers. And so we're looking to have some people on a panel to talk to us, just in a general sense, but also maybe give us some specific action steps that parents can take to help support the mental health of our community. So that is coming in November, and that will be, I believe, November 7th. Is that right? I don't have it in front of me. So in closing, I just want to thank you so much for all of you for being here tonight. And I wanted to encourage those who are not already voting members to become a voting member so you can represent your school. If you think you're going to want to vote and be a part of important PCN activities like school board candidate screening processes or other voting matters that we may have in the future, I encourage you to sign up. And I mentioned homework at the beginning, and basically your homework is to help disseminate information that you learn at parent council meetings to parents and caregivers at your school or schools if you have more than one. And if anybody here is willing to be a key contact for their school, please email us or speak up anytime and let us know, because we need all the help that we can get at the school level. And we just want you to reach out and encourage your friends, other parents and caregivers across the district to attend these meetings. We could have 130 members if we had all the schools represented. So that's what we're aiming for. And we just need to continue to inform and encourage our community to come together on the critical issues that impact our schools, our teachers, and most importantly, our kids. So with that, I will close. Yes, Brooke, I see your question, and feel free to email us or contact us through our Facebook page. You can also go to our website where we have a contact us form. And with that, I will say good night. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night and thank you.
Thank you.